call this meeting to order. Could I get confirmation of the agenda, including amendment with a letter from the Sacred Heart Parents Council? Kevin Faulkner first. Anita Hitterman seconds it. All in favor? Passes. Disclosure of pecuniary interests, if any. None noted. Public comments is next. I'm just going to read before we start. So this is a 2-minute session where the people in the audience can talk. This section is new and has been recently added to the council agenda. The purpose is to provide members of the public with an opportunity to share their views, opinions, and/or provide additional information regarding a matter on the council agenda. There is a time limit of 2 minutes per person, and it is at my discretion as how many people are allowed to speak. We do ask that each speaker share a different view, option, or comment than the previous speakers. I want to clarify this is not a question and answer period. Negative or derogatory comments towards individual members of council and/or individual members of staff are not acceptable. You will be asked to stop immediately. Prior to speaking, we ask that you provide your name, address, and the agenda items you wish to comment on and step up to the podium. Okay, is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to anything on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we'll continue on. So we have the consent agenda. The Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopt consent items 5.1.1 to 5.1.2, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.1.3 to 5.3.2 for information. Do I have a mover? Anita, seconder. Kevin, all in favor? Passes. Did anybody want to speak to any of those before we move on? Okay, public meetings and hearings and delegations. Phil and Mark Beard, Wingham residents for the Housing Dam. Folks like to step up and speak to us?
So, good evening, Reeve Bailey and members of council. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak to council about the letter we submitted dated February the 6th, which I understand is in your package. On behalf of Phil and myself, I would like to begin by presenting to you the rationale or the reason behind our letter. We attended the February 4th council meeting in which council passed a resolution to develop terms of reference to determine the future of the house and dam. It was unclear in the motion as to whether this committee would just look at whether it was feasible to repair the dam, or whether it would be decommissioned, or even to explore other options and possibilities. For this reason, we sent our letter respectfully encouraging council to consider developing a process that would allow council to gather all of the information that can guide council in making an informed, clear, and objective decision as to the future of the house and dam.
In our letter, we presented one example of a process that the municipality of North Perth used when they were trying to decide what to do with their dam. We included this example not because of the outcome that they came to, but just because of the process that they established. So North Perth established a committee of council consisting of 2 councillors and 4 citizens to gather information on the dam and the river. And they prepared a report outlining their findings and recommendations. And this approach was successful only because the people that they appointed were willing to keep an open mind and were willing to look at all of the information objectively. And in thinking over the weekend, alternatively, council could gather and review all the information themselves without appointing a committee to make this decision. the reason that we bring this up too is this is a little different project than the Town Hall Theater project or the museum project because of the public safety issues that are associated with the dam. It does have an impact on flooding upstream, both in Wingham and in Morris Turnberry. So we think it's important that council be actively involved in any committee that is appointed.
So in closing, Phil and I again would like to respectfully encourage council to develop and engage in a process that invites all committee members to enter into such a process without any preconceived ideas or outcomes, so being open-minded upon entering, that allows for the gathering of all facts and information, and that provides the opportunity for a clear picture to emerge, which will ultimately permit council to make a sound decision as to what is needed that's in the best interest economically, environmentally, and also of cultural interest of the municipality and its residents, both now and in the future. We truly thank you for this opportunity to be here before you this evening, and we'd be happy to answer any of the questions you might have.
Does council members have any questions, concerns, or comments? Go ahead, Kevin.
In your comment about having a clear, non-objective view for the members of the committee, I've only found both sides of the situation. Who would you suggest that? Who is this non-partial committee members that we would be able to draw on?
We'd have to put together some terms of reference and say this is the type of people we're looking for and get people to apply. I know in North Perth they had 2 that were for and 2 that were against, but they were also willing to be open-minded enough to look at both sides, and in the end they all agreed on the decision. So yeah, it's really important the type of people that you pick, because if people are polarized and aren't willing to look at the other side's viewpoint, then you aren't going to get anywhere.
Back to your that's basically the process that we mentioned at the Wednesday meeting when the dam committee came forward. Wasn't it just terms of reference?
I think through the media, I think things were a little misrepresented, and unfortunately, there's been a few. So yes, but it's good that Phil brought this out in the open because it needs to be addressed. And I want to go over to Chris Palmer now.
Yeah, through you, Reeve. We felt that like we could have just said, no committee, just forget about it, and the optics aren't good doing that. So being more transparent and what have you, that forming a committee of council, it doesn't mean it's going to be filled with pro-dam people. It won't be. The terms of reference are being worked on right now, and council will view them, and I'm sure that they will include both sides in the middle, and then they can go look for options. Maybe there's better ones out there. That group from Guelph, like that sounded pretty good. It's got to be out there. And we just want to be transparent with everything. And then we can make a decision at the end of the day. And people will know that, we're looking at both sides. And then it stands. Then, of course, the cost has to be involved. So everything that you have in your letter, and there's been other letters, we're very cognizant of them, of the ideas of them as well. So we thank you for bringing it up. That's what it's all about. We want you to view and others. So thanks for that, Phil and Mark, and we hope there's more. We've heard a lot of the other side, of the pro-dam side, and that's good, but it's we need that all-round view for us to make a decision.
Thank you. Any other comments? Go ahead, Trevor.
I do want to make it perfectly clear that this committee whatever the composition of the committee looks like, is a committee of council. They only recommend to council what the decision they think is in the best interest of the municipality. Council themselves have to take that under advisement whether they make the decision or not. So they don't have to agree with the committee. It's just the committee is responsible for helping gather the information and provide a recommendation based on what their information is and what they believe to be the right information to the decision. Ultimately, the responsibility of that dam is in the municipality's hands. We need to make the decision on whether it gets rebuilt, taken out, whatever the case may be. It's the municipality's responsibility to make the decision for the municipality because it is owned by the municipality. So I think that I just want to make sure that's clear, that the terms of reference are going to indicate all of these things that have been discussed. But at the end of the day, it is only a recommendation to council. That decision from that committee is not going to be binding on council whatsoever.
Any other comments or? Mr. and Mrs. Beard, I want to thank you very kindly for coming out. You have helped this council. You've taken a burden off this council because there was a lot of misinformation. And with the information you gave in the conversation we've had, I think maybe the public will now understand that we're going to move forward in an open-minded fashion. And again, I can't thank you enough because there has been a lot of conversation over the last couple of weeks because of misrepresentation in the, what I consider anyway, in the local media. Thank you very kindly. Next presentation is from Mike Martin, Wingham residents, and it's about, again, the dam.
My name is Mike Martin. I'm a resident in Wingham for the last over a couple of years on 334 Center Street in Wingham. And you may have answered my question. I hope you have. Certainly the letter I wrote, hopefully, did everybody get it? Okay, so I think my concern is quite clearly expressed and it's based on what was reported in the article in the independent newspaper that said clearly that the House and Dam Group, who's interested in building the dam, rebuilding the dam, have requested to be made committee of council. And that to me said that if that's approved, that means council approves them as a group and their agenda as a group, and it's going to proceed on that way, and that kind of concerned me. And thus my letter, which said, I don't have an issue with the committee of council looking at the issue. I have an issue with the committee of council representing only one of many possible views that should be looked at. And you will not get my experience. You will not get an unbiased view when the committee is loaded with people of one belief only, or one set of views only. So that was why I wrote the letter. If council has not yet proceeded with the committee or is not proceeding with House and Dam Group, then my letter either had a little bit of influence or at least could be thrown in the bin because it's no longer required. But if you're still considering their request, then I would like to understand why.
Any questions or comments from, go ahead, Trevor?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Again, I think it's been mentioned a couple of times is that they are one proponent of the dam group, of the House of Dam. The terms of reference that is being developed by staff are to include a multitude of individuals, not just that group. So that isn't the expectation. The expectation is it's going to be a committee of council made up of more than just individuals that are from the House and Dam group. They're gonna have to apply to the committee no different than yourself or any other individual that wants to be on that committee, and then therefore we'll move forward as that process is laid out. But at this point, the terms of reference haven't been finalized with council, so there hasn't really been a development of what that terms of reference looks like. So at this point, I think we've got the gist of your information.
So the House and Dam Group's request to be made a committee of council is not proceeding. Is that what you're saying?
We're going to proceed with a committee to review the dam on all facets. There will be letters or an article in the paper after we've okayed the structure, and everyone can put their name forward, and everyone will have the ability to be on that.
Bruce?
Yeah.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. Thank you very much. Answers my question. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
And
Mr. Mayor.
I'll throw my hat in the ring now formally, and then formally when it comes out. Because I'd be
Looking forward
interested
to that.
participate. Thank you.
Thank you very kindly. Okay. We're going to now going to the Planning Advisory Committee for the Fairview School, that the Council Township of North Huron hereby adjourn the regular council meeting at 6:15 to enter into a Planning Advisory Committee meeting. Can I have a motion for that, please? Trevor, first. Yes, seconds, all in favor? Passes. Okay. I'd like to call to order the Planning Advisory Committee. Disclosure of pecuniary interests. Seeing none, we'll move on. So the file, zoning bylaw amendment file number Z02-19. Part North, Part Lot 28, Concession 10, East Wawanosh Ward, Township of North Huron, 38553 Belfast Road. Application Fairview School, CEO Daniel Shetler. Purpose of the public meeting. The purpose of this meeting is for the Planning Advisory Committee of the Township of North Huron to consult with the public on the zoning amendment identified above. Requirement for the public meeting. This public meeting is required to be held pursuant to the Planning Act RSO 1990 as amended, which requires the council shall hold at least one public meeting and that all property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the area affected shall be given notice of the meeting by the clerk of the municipality. Pursuant to the Planning Act RSO 1990 as amended, council shall forward to such boards, commissions, authorities, and/or agents of council considers may have an interest in the proposed sufficient information to enable them to understand it generally. And with that, I hand it over to Laura.
Good evening, Council. So this is for zoning amendment applications at 02-2019. And it was applied for by the owners and applicants Daniel and Katie Shetler for a property at 38553 Belfast Road, which is on the southeastern intersection of Donnybrook and Belfast Road in East Wawanosh. The purpose of this zoning application is to change a portion of the zoning on that farm to AG 1-12, a general agricultural special zone, from the current AG 1 zone to permit the proposed school on the northeast corner of the farm to service the surrounding Horse Drawn community. The proposed area subject to the rezoning is approximately 1 acre, and the balance of the property would remain and retain the AG 1 general agricultural zone. So this is an aerial of the property as of 2015, outlined in red, and the portion of the property that's subject to be rezoned AG 1-12 is outlined in the blue there in the northeast corner. Missing from the aerial photo is a sawmill that's been constructed since this photo was taken in early 2015. These are some site photos of the property showing the current sawmill and storage that's in operation, and as well standing on the road looking east over Belfast Road, showing the portion of the property where this would be proposed to be constructed. The subject property is designated agriculture in the North Huron official plan, which recognizes that an intent of the plan is to ensure long-term agricultural use in the rural area and also promote and support a range of farming intensities, farm-related uses, and limited non-farm related development. As mentioned, the subject property does contain the sawmill as seen, as well as an existing residence and farm, and the remainder is used for crops. In the North Huron official plan, it does address community facilities proposed to be located in the agricultural area, and specifically recognizes the constitutional right existing for those communities using horse-drawn transportation, and that this form of transportation may require the establishment of schools and churches in the rural area. It states that to permit such a use as a school for the horse-drawn community, it may be by rezoning without requiring an amendment to the official plan, and that the school must be located on an existing lot, not be severed off, and you reduce the amount of agricultural land it's removing from production. So the proposed school on Belfast Road is on the existing farm and removes a minimal amount of land from the workable area, and would also be proposed to be located adjacent to the other use of the sawmill on the property. Here's the another site photo looking further south, east along Belfast Road, where the school will be proposed, and you can see the neighboring property there. And this is also looking along the road there. Similar policies are found in the Huron County official plan, and it also recognizes the need for long-term agricultural use, but that official plans such as the North Huron one may permit on-farm schools for communities with horse-drawn vehicles as their primary means of transportation. So this application does conform to the North Huron and Huron County official plans. With specific regards to the minimum distance separation, so the calculated minimum distance from a new non-livestock barn with regards to the existing livestock barns in the area, in the Ontario Ministry of Agricultural, Food and Rural Affairs guidelines for the MDS, it does acknowledge that normally schools, churches, and cemeteries are considered type B, which require double the distance set back from existing livestock barns. But in the case if it is a new or expanding school, church, or cemetery to serve the horse-drawn community, it is considered a type A, so it is just the single calculated distance. The proposed zoning amendment for this portion of the property would also clarify that for future reference if new barns wanted to be constructed in the area. This is looking to the west along Belfast Road, so you can see just at the top of the hill there on the left, that's the Shetler property. So we did receive comments during the commenting period. First, we received comments from a neighbor who they wanted to clarify they did not object to the proposed rezoning or the proposed use of a school, but they did voice concerns about its proposed location given the current width and use of Belfast Road. Further west of this property, further east of this property along Belfast Road, there is a gravel pit owned and operated by Lavis Contracting. And the use of the road is that this is the main transportation route for gravel trucks to get onto Donnybrook and further proceed north or south for the gravel. So they did have concerns about introducing a use that would require increased horse and buggy traffic as well as possibly pedestrian traffic during operating hours for the gravel pit. I did reach out to Lavis Contracting. They were beyond the circulated area of 120 meters for the zoning application, but as they are one of the larger uses of this road, operating the larger equipment, I did want to get their opinion and have the chance to submit comments. So they did submit comments echoing that they do have concerns about potential safety conflicts with particularly pedestrian traffic with the highest identified concern. So if there were people walking along the road, given that there are no shoulders, and then as you can see in this, if there was more snow, there's the potential that there's not a lot of room to move to either side along the road that's already gravel and narrow. So they did submit those and wanted to bring those to council's attention in addition to the neighbor. I have spoke to Sean and Stu Moffat for North Huron Public Works. These concerns were also echoed by them as well as the proposed location for the school. It would have to be to enter onto Belfast Road in close proximity to the existing entrance for the sawmill, given that there is actually some hills and there could be the issue for conflict for sightlines and visibility for vehicles pulling in and out and not seeing the traffic coming from east or west. So this is a bit further up on the hill where my car's parked. There is the entrance to the sawmill portion. So you can see that's at the top of the hill. But if anything was further located to the east, you could have issues viewing east or west to turn out onto the road. So I did get comments from Sean about the recommendation for putting up signs to identify the area as a school zone with a posted reduced speed limit. So Sean did provide that recommendation, and as well the cost that would be approximately $305 to put those signs up. And Lavis did say that would be good as a notifier to the trucks, but at this point, because they would be slowing down for the stop sign at Belfast and Donnybrook, it's not necessarily the speed of the truck, but the visibility and the lack of options for maneuverability given the road width. So you can see on this aerial the outlined farm in red there, and then the outlined blue property is the pit. So you can see the distance between the two, and that the trucks exiting the pit do have to travel that distance along Belfast Road to get to Donnybrook. The option of going further east along Belfast Road for the trucks is not very feasible because Donnybrook is the closest paved road to go north or south along with the posted speed limit of 90, so it's their easiest option for travel. So tonight I am recommending that council defer the application, defer making a decision on the zoning application, as I do think there would be more benefit to have a discussion with North Huron Public Works and the applicant about if there's a potential solution or other alternatives or options for this application, and further discuss any issues that have come up during the consultation process for it. So, the option would be to defer tonight and have it come back for council to pass or deny it at a future meeting.
Thank you, Laura. Okay. At this time, I'd like to ask if Dan Scheffner or his agent are present to provide verbal and or written comments if they'd like.
What do you think, Adam?
Like we had originally, we were gonna go further east, but there was a neighbor that was in favor of it, so we wanted to keep a good relationship to the neighbors, so that's why we came up to like Scholars Hall coming from the east. Going further east would be more central, but this is about the only option we have.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who would like to make comments or? Not seeing any.
Oh,
I'm going to get you in a sec.
that's right.
Okay, no problem. Okay, comments of others. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of North Huron before the bylaws pass, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of North Huron to the local planning appeal tribunal. It may not be added to the party to the hearing of the appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to add to the person to the public body. Members of the public are asked to provide comments. Is there any other comments? And we've just been through this. Kind of cool way to tell me. Not seeing any. Planning Advisory Committee members' questions or comments. Members of the Planning Advisory Committee are asked for any questions or comments and reminded that the motion for the recommendation of the committee will be called for toward the end of the public meeting. Amendment number 13. Go ahead, Chris.
Through you, Reeve. Daniel, I understand. I understand that the location would be better east. You said scholars, so the children mostly come from towards the river, I suppose.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely no other place other than that one that was being challenged, so to speak.
Well, the one being challenged after the fact, the neighbor was in favor. Stu Mama addressed that the laneway wouldn't be feasible where we wanted to go in because of visibility from either side.
Okay. So truck traffic becomes the issue. I guess it's a good location, Otherwise, what are your feelings about the truck traffic?
I realize it'd be concerned, but for the most part of it, kids are taught to walk where it's supposed to, there won't be a lot, like as far as horse-drawn traffic, would be very minimum. Most of them will
Walk from their homes.
And like where they're going now, they have to use a horse, and because it's traffic, horses shy, it's actually safer to walk.
And at the present, with them having to use a horse, they have to cross Donnybrook Road, which is a concern for us.
Understand?
And I will state that North Huron has very good drivers on the snowplow. They'll actually slow down or stop. But you know, there's always a chance, of course, jump in the ditches and over scholars, whereas if you're walking, if you're isn't far from the school, which is not an issue now.
So your options are gone. That's it.
Yeah. And I guess we, like Laura stated about, I guess for trucks coming up Donnybrook, we aren't far from Donnybrook, so maybe that's a chance that the trucks aren't going too fast.
No, yeah, they're already slowing down to stop at the turn.
You saying along Donnybrook or coming down Belfast?
Like they come up Belfast and go
Yeah.
up Donnybrook, but they come vice versa too. They come up Donnybrook, come down Belfast.
Yeah. And on Donnybrook itself, on that corner, wouldn't work. Like I know you have schools on highways everywhere. I see them. So the kids they have shoulders, the kids walk on them.
Yeah.
It is scary. It is scary. But you don't, that's the way it is.
This lad here has the experience in snowplow when he was a boy, going to school, and well, you can tell how it went.
Oh, well, it was just a matter of whether the snowplow driver didn't really slow down or stop, and the horse pulled in the ditch, and I ended up breaking my arm, and it was a bad experience, but it was an experience.
So I'm just gonna kind of keep us on the subject if you
Yeah.
don't mind.
Can I add one more thing?
You can, yes.
All the scholars or the children that would be attending the schoolhouse are already traveling that same road, but they are crossing Donnybrook and going another 2 kilometers further. However, they are mostly, at least half of them anyway, are going as far as buggy, but they are traveling the same route. At the present. This would just mean they wouldn't have to go nearly as far, but you would obviously see more children walking because it was a lot closer.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, I will continue to read. This is a public meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee, not a council meeting. Thus, the decision of council may or may not be made this evening. If the bylaw is passed by council, the clerk is required to send notice of the passing of the bylaw to all the persons and agencies notified at the public meeting. There is a 20-day objection period from the time notice is passed of the bylaw has been mailed by first-class post, wherein submissions and letters and objections or support in respect to the passing of the bylaw will be received by the clerk. If an objection is received and an appeal is lodged with the local planning tribunal committee, and at the point where the township no longer has any control over the time factor involved, if council does not pass the bylaw, the applicant may appeal it to the local planning appeal tribunal. If the bylaw is passed and no objections are received within the objection period, the clerk certifies that the bylaw is in force and in effect as of the date of the passing of the notice, and therefore the Huron County Planning and Development Committee. Recommendation of the Huron County Planning Department. It's up to you, Laura.
So I am recommending deferral, which would mean for the Planning Advisory Committee to neither recommend denial or approval of the zoning amendment, because that would allow it to come back to council, hopefully having some of the further discussion with Public Works and Daniel about the property and possibly including labels in those as well. And we could bring back so that we've addressed some of the concerns that were brought forward tonight.
So now we're going to go to the recommendation to council from the Planning Advisory Committee. Note, only one of the following recommendations can be made by the Planning Advisory Committee. The wording of the possible recommendations are generic and may be argumented by the Planning Advisory Committee. So A is the zoning amendment be approved. B, the zoning amendment be deferred. A more informal or confirmation of the particular standards have been met, or notice that the related planning application has been passed by the County of Huron. C, that the zoning amendment be denied. Do I have a motion? A, B, or C? B is the deferral that's asked for by Laura. Trevor?
I will make the motion to defer it to provide more information as it relates to the concerns of traffic and stuff with regards to the applicant and the concerns from the North Huron staff as well as the residents in that area.
Do I have a seconder? Rick McBurney? All in favor? Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
I see that, I respect your position, Laura. I see this as their only option. And I see it, the situation all over the place, many locations. And as far as the Lavis truckers, it is their responsibility, legally and otherwise, to drive accordingly. So if they see kids, they have to slow down. Dump truckers are prone to be speeding because the more loads, the more money. But when they see kids, it's they're liable, and there'd be an education. So I think it should be passed.
There is a motion on the floor.
Sorry, say no.
Would anybody else like to speak to it? Seeing none, the motion be that the motion be amended to be deferred. Hands, please. 3, 4. Motion passes for it to be deferred. That there be no further business before the Planning Advisory Committee, the public meeting hereby adjourns at 6:37. What's that? Oh, do I have a motion for that? Trevor's first, Anita's second, all in favor? Passes. Okay, reports are next. Clerk's Department. I don't see any. Finance Department, we're going to hand it over to Donna. We're going to start with the reserve list.
Yes, thank you, Reed. So I apologize, we had some sort of a glitch with the reserves listing, so they didn't face the right way in the report, and also there was a written report prepared to accompany that, and as I said, for whatever technical glitches we have, you didn't get the whole written report as well, so I apologize for that. So I do want to take a few minutes, though, if I may, and go through your 2018 reserves listing. So the reserve listings are basically how much money that you have saved. And so on the listing that is called total reserves, that includes your working reserves. It also includes a number of reserves that have been set aside in separate GL accounts to save up or be allocated to certain items and topics that have arisen over the years. So our total reserves our total reserves adds up to $12,413,477.50 on that total reserve sheet. That does include your working reserve, which is how we save for individual projects, $2,238,990. And I'm going to go over to that sheet in a few moments. But I wanted to bring to your attention that the biggest part of the reserves comes from water and sewer. And as you know, we have started through our asset management planning quite some years ago, starting to set aside specific amounts off the water and sewer bills to be allocated to capital for infrastructure replacement. So we have the working reserve, as I said, is $2,238,000. The balance of those reserves is 3,428,000, and then the water and sewer reserve funds, as you can see there, adds up to 6,746,127.92. So as part of the year-end audit, we did bring to council a listing of reserves, and there was in your report, it outlined a couple of more additional transfers to reserves. So I want to go over those. There's actually 4 more reserves transfers that I'm requesting to be done as part of year-end. And the total of those 4 is $205,615.10 is what's listed in your motion on your agenda. So throughout the year, we receive from Aggregate Resources money that is for license fees for the East Wallinosh gravel pit. So it is in the amount of $7,031.85. So as you'll see on the listing, the total reserve listing, if you look partway down the page for East Wallinosh, we do have a pit rehabilitation reserve, and we have added this $7,031.85 that I'm speaking of to bring that total to $63,128.36. So that's how much money we have set aside for pit rehabilitation there. The next item is when we, one of the last days the police service was in effect, the chief did up his final report for grant payment requests. And so we received 2 grants from the ministry. One is called CPP and one is called 1,000 Officers. So those grants are more than what we had planned on, to the amount of $13,057.34. So I'm requesting that, as you know, with the expenses that we're talking about for the police budget, that additional amount be transferred to reserve. The third item is, in 2018, we received an unexpected boiler rebate. In 2017, there was a new boiler installed down in the complex, and we applied for a rebate, but we didn't know if we would get it. So it came along in 2018. So I'm requesting that money be specifically set aside as well. And then when we have all the entries done for the audit, the auditors haven't finished yet, but what we do is prepare our surplus amount for the year and transfer that into our tax stabilization account. So our unaudited surplus for 2018 is $179,525.91. And as most of you know, the auditors were here last week, and then they will, once they get all of their work done, they can confirm that. So that's the additional amounts that I'm requesting to be transferred to reserve, which is outlined as part of your motion. So now if we could go over to the working reserve sheet. And this sheet is very detailed. So over the years, and part of our goal for 2018 is for myself and, the senior management team, myself and Sean and Vicky in particular, what we want to do is to be able to rename and regroup these accounts so that we don't have so many. Over the years, we've been so very specific that we're saving $20,000 for the Olympia, and we're saving $10,000 for a roof and all those types of things. So as I said, this is how we save for various projects that at some point the staff would like to bring forward, or they've been items that have been identified from council that are things that needs to be done. So as I said, in total, our total reserves, you see them there, and as I said, and $12 million sounds like a lot of money. But when you think that our asset replacement cost is $215 million, it's certainly, a drop in the bucket towards where we need to be. But we're certainly on the path of, as staff members, we take every opportunity to try to get any dollars that we possibly can into reserves. And we've made a lot of progress over the last few years in doing so. And the working reserves as well are things that it does give council some leeway. So if things come up and council has a project or something that hasn't been budgeted for, it only takes a motion of council to reallocate some of these funds to whatever project it is that may arise unbeknownst to us at budget time. So, as I said, you have both those reserve listings. The auditors are going through them, and I've gone over the amounts, the extra amounts for year end to be transferred to reserves. Do I have any questions that I could go over with you in more detail?
Does anyone have any questions for Donna? Not seeing any, I'm going to read the motion. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receive the 2018 total reserves and working reserves list as presented by the Director of Finance for information purposes. And further, that the Council of Township of North Huron approves the additional transfers to reserves in the total amount of $2,056,015.10.
205.
205.
205.
I tried. $205,615.10. Do I have a mover? Chris Palmer moves. Paul Heffer seconds. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion passes. On the next, we have the development charge summary. Do you want to speak to that, Donna?
Yes, please, Reed. So each year I'm required to prepare a statement of development charges received for the year. Our development charges, as per the report, were implemented back in 2011. Since that time, we have collected a total of $65,740.40. The original cost of implementing the development charges was $33,379. That was for all the studies and things that we had to do back at that time in order to, we had not had development charges in North Huron before then. So we had to do a number of studies and public consultation and such to come up with a list of projects that were eligible to be, to have development charges collected on. So we are able to recoup that original cost, but only through the administration portion of each development charge collected. And so at this point, we still have about $20,767 to collect before we have that original study cost paid off. So for 2018, we collected 3 development charges, all from the East Wawanosh ward, and that total was $4,953.78. And so our total balance, if you take the amount that we haven't collected from the original study, is $27,711.51. So I'm just going to go over the projects quickly. So we are collecting for Wingham residents, pay for when they are issued a building permit that is eligible on a lot that has DCs applied to it. For the Northwest Trunk Sewer Replacement Program. All of the 3 wards paid for the Public Works Facility. That was something that was identified back in 2011 for firefighter outfitting, parkland development, and then a number of capital growth studies. So also in addition to this, Blythe has been added on to their development charges for the new well. So any properties in Blythe for that new well number 5 that was constructed in Blythe, we do collect development charges for them. But as I said, in 2018, all of them were collected for in the East Wawanosh ward for building basically in right there. Okay, so are there any questions? And we're required to send this report into the ministry each year.
Any questions for Donna, comments? Okay, I'm going to read the Go ahead, Trevor.
I'll move it.
Okay. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives the 2018 development charges statement for 2011-2018 summary as presented by the Director of Finance for information purposes. Trevor Sipes motions. Do I have a seconder? Chris Palmer seconds. All in favor? Passes. Police budget is next, and I believe, is that going to be Dawn or Trevor? Trevor? Go ahead, Trevor.
Thank you, Reeve. So as part of the Police Services Board, we went back, the Police Services Board had asked, we'd asked to review the salaries and wages as well as the final costs associated to some, not the termination or issue costs, but other final costs associated with disbanding the Wingham Police Force. So round one is basically what you've seen in your budget preparations under round one during the preparation or the budget deliberation discussion. So round two, there really is a couple of things that I wanted to comment to, and one is the salaries. So the salaries was a discussion that we wanted to make sure that we were covering everything relating to the closure of those, the reconciliation of their pay. So basically up till February 21st, we wanted to make sure that all their vacation was got paid out, all their sick time, if there wasn't any sick time because that was taken out of their contract. Any on-call time, which was only Sergeant Foxton at the time. There was some on-call time back for the police chief based on when his contract was renegotiated prior to us, prior to me being on the board anyways. So those things have all been incorporated in round two of the budget. The one thing that I will say is the benefits line we've left alone. We have left that alone for a certain reason. We're not exactly sure what that is going to be. So we've left it because the benefit line has always been a percentage of their overall wages, because it's no different than the similar to the benefits line on public works or recreation. There's certain things that we as municipality have to pay for, CPP, and also the actual premiums to their benefit plan. So we've left that alone. And Donna has, the Police Services Board isn't always up to date on those information. So this has been the budget that the Police Services Board has issued to the municipality. Understanding that Donna is going to take a look at that benefits line in more detail, and if it needs to be reduced for whatever reason, she will bring that up on the March 18th discussion when we are reviewing the final police budget and the final budget as a whole. So I did want to reiterate that it does seem a little high, and I want to comment to that of why it seems. Usually we think it's up somewhere in the neighborhoods of 30 to 35% of gross wages. That's generally what we think of as a benefit rate. But with the transition, we thought it would be best that Donna look at that more in more detail than the Police Services Board, because even the chief doesn't necessarily know all those things that tie into it. Okay. The only other thing, there's a couple of things that were added. So in the phone, fax, and internet line on the statement, what that is we've added about $2,500 to the budget because the phone lines over at the police service building, so they were signed a 3-year contract in December of 2017. We are leaving that contract open for the main line for the first 3 months of the transition to allow, obviously, the public and everybody else to know if they call that number, they get a message to tell them to call 911 or Huron County OPP. But after that, because we've signed an agreement for 3 years, we're going to have to pay that contract out up until the time. There is no termination clause. The clause is you pay the contract up until for the 2.5 years. So it's $24 a month for every month for each line, and there's 3 lines. There's a phone, there's a fax line, there's an internet line, and there's the main line. So those are going to be looked at, and I've budgeted based on the conversation of what those look like to be about $2,500 extra costs associated to doing that disbandment. The other thing I did want to mention is we did leave some $5,000 in legal and accounting, only because we don't know what's going to come up over the next. Obviously, the Police Services Board has some some issues at this point with some grievances and stuff, so we're dealing with all those. So we wanted to make sure we kept some money in there. All the other reserves and stuff have been dealt with, and they're being transferred from reserves into covering all these one-time costs in the budget. So we did want to keep $5,000 just handy, just in case. At the time, if after all the transition is done and that is not needed, obviously that can be used as a supporting of the reserves going on later for 2019 and moving forward. The only other thing was we added a little bit of money in equipment repairs and maintenance because we had to take that really wasn't really thought about at the time, because obviously it wasn't, is we had to dismantle all of the items in the police cruiser that was being transferred to the firemen. So that's going to be about $300 or $400. And you know, we've taken all of those costs associated to that budget, and you know, they're gonna, the fire service is gonna have to pay for the costs associated to equipping it to their means, but all of those things have been looked after with regards to that type of stuff. The only other big cost I want to mention is that has been changed from when you've seen this in round one is the communication system. So the communication system was in round one. It was a directive of myself from the chair as the board to stop the dispatch services at February 21st. That's the service that we offer or we get from Owen Sound Police Service for the dispatching of the emergency calls. So the agreement at the time was interpreted or read by myself as to be finished on December 31st, 2017. And they never communicated a renegotiated plan. After the Police Services Board, you know, did their investigation and looked at it, they come to me and said, you've read the agreement wrong. And I take ownership in that, and I read the agreement wrong. So what it is when we had disbanded, we were required to provide 18 months notice to the Owen Sound Police Service in order for disbandment. That was in the agreement. You had to give them 18 months notice, or you paid the current year plus 1 year. So basically it was both. It was either one, whatever was less. So because of the way the disbandment worked for us, and we didn't disband and then we did disband, we didn't really have 18 months to give them. We had 12. So our agreement, so they came back with a letter stating that, Chair, you read the agreement wrong. Sorry about your luck. We're going to give you till December 31st, 2019 out of goodwill. We're going to reduce what your overall request is, because they could have asked us to pay till March of 2020, but they're saying after December 31st, 2019, they're okay with. So it has been the directive of the board to send a letter back to the Owen Sound Police Service to say, thank you very much. We do acknowledge that the chair of the board read it wrong, and we're in support of what this is. But that is going to add about $22,000 to the agreement, to the budget as it reads, and that's why the increase from 9,000 to 30,000. So those are the big changes from round one to round two, but the significant one that took a lot of the digging into was the salaries and wages. We just wanted to make sure that it made sense, and now we should be even closer because they're done. They're all the costs have been done, so we should be able to get a better idea of that. But at the end of the day, this is what the board has presented as the top approval limit of the budget. They've also indicated that you, as well as all the councillors, were aware that Donna had mentioned about putting $75,000 into grants. The board is more than supportive of putting those back in as well. We, as the Police Services Board, don't get into the revenue side. That wasn't really our in-depth perception. So, you know, we were more the cost side, not the revenue side. So I chatted with the board. Rick was involved in that meeting with the board. And they were more than happy, obviously, with putting that money in, that $75,000 into the grants, understanding that it's going to be the municipality that does all the work with support of the OPP and probably the detachment commander to get that information into the ministry to see if we qualify for those grants. But that will also incorporate all of the proceeds from the assets that we sold as well. So is there any questions from the members of the council about this?
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, through you, Reeve. I think like everybody here, we heard it the first time, but I'm still so shocked at the salaries. Anyways, the benefit should be around 74, not 94, so that saves a bit, but that's at 35%. The salaries for a couple of months work?
Yeah. So you have to understand, Councilor Palmer, that every one of those individuals are going to be, they are roughly in the neighborhoods of about $100,000 a year, each one of them. Like their overall salary is $100,000 a year for the six constables or 5 constables, 1 sergeant, and 1 police chief. So you take into consideration $100,000, and that's base salary. That's not taking into consideration overtime or statutory pay or any of those other things that they get because they're hourly employees. That this is one of the reasons why the transition to the OPP was why it was, because the argument is that you had 6 individuals who were always not necessarily on 2 per shift. So that's why the discussion was that we would have had to hire 4, potentially 5 new officers at about
100,000.
Well, they would end up being 100,000 after they got through the whole process. But again, you're looking at a budget that was going to go between somewhere in the neighborhoods of $2 million before you even take into consideration the rest of it. So and to be fair to them, like it seems like a lot of money, and I get that the Police Services Board was very apt to say this as well, but the North Huron Police Service and the Wingham Police Service, those members have been nickeled and dimed for many years in order, and no benefit to themselves, but they understand where they live. And the conversation is that, they weren't making par or even close to par of police members in associations where they're in the same area, like Hanover Police Service or Saugeen Shores, or even the OPP that are patrolling around the same area. They're all doing the same job. They're all doing the same amount of work. They're all protecting individuals. They have the same training. So the conversation of fair and equitable was a conversation from negotiations, and it was hard to deny them, because and that's the conversation when we talked about it, and that's what the Police Services Board was very clear that we continue to do this. You're starting to price yourselves out of the market in a municipality of 3,000 people. Hanover and Saugeen Shores and them, they have 5 and 6 and 7,000 people to spread those costs around. Wingham doesn't have that. So this is the part that the Wingham Police Services Board took very hard, and so did council when we went to the budget last year, and the ratepayers of Wingham are going to end up paying 15% increase in taxes, and that's why this will shift. That's real, and that's as much as I don't like it either. We have to be realistic to what the costs are to run a police service in this small municipality.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Through your the communications system, where are they running out of? Their own sound as CAC or?
Yeah, so Owen Sound Police Service provides the service. So they provide the service, but that also includes, that line item also includes like, what else does it include? includes like optic stuff, like those types of things. But the majority of that cost is relating to the dispatch service that the Owen Sound Police Service provided us.
It's not the North Huron fire services are also through the Owen Sound contract.
That is correct, but that is that's negotiated through the fire service. So they negotiate two different services. That's two different services.
Well, I was just curious as to whether, if I had to pay for the service anyway, whether there was any of that service during that time that we could still use, but the fire department could use it.
So the costs are,
I know
yeah, they're
they're
interdependent. They're not interdependant. So the technology that they have and the stuff that they have to do with regards to that service, that's part of, and in all honesty, it's part of the agreement. The agreement stated that if you don't want the service, the termination clause in the agreement says if you don't want the service, you need to provide us 18 months or pay us the current year left and next year, and that was the.
Well, I was just seeing if there was any way of using that service while we saw it from time frame.
I don't think so.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
Through you, Reeve. I guess what's really bothered me, and it bothered me before, and I still didn't feel comfortable from the answer, the capital costs that OPP, I have two questions. So it's the capital cost of 244 and then the exit cost. But the capital cost, like I helped build a house and I know what it costs, and this is a small house and I'm maybe a medium-sized house. What are they wanting to do? And with that, I say, we're responsible for this money, and I think we should know what the heck they want to do with it. What do you fix there? What are the OPP wanting to get fixed in a building that they're already using? And it's going to be a satellite at this point, but do we know that it'll be a satellite 10 years from now? Or do they want it just fixed up for maybe 1 or 2 years? Like, it's sort of, we don't know what their plans are in the county. All you do really hear is that everything's going to Clinton. And okay, but they want money spent here. Okay, what are their plans? But I'd like to know, what are they going to spend that on? That's money that we're all responsible for, and I want it to be spent right.
So I don't disagree with you in the sense about what that is. I think part of that you have to understand that one-time capital cost is they have to use, that's uniforms, that's guns, that's clothing these officers. Like,
are they hiring new officers?
Yeah, they're hiring the ones that we had. So they got to clothe them and put firearms in their hand and safety gear and all that other stuff.
That's
so
what they call capital costs.
That's what they call capital costs. So
Right.
that's capital costs for the officers, but also the capital costs associated to doing a renovation to that satellite office. And I completely understand. I understand your position, as well as there's not necessarily just this council's position, but there's other councils within the county that are having a concern about the fact that they're all satellite offices and maybe going to where the new administration building is. We don't know where that's going to end up, but the idea is that there's certain things in that building on Bristol Terrace that they're not equipped for, that this money was being used for on top of servicing those officers. So do we know exactly what they're doing to the Bristol Terrace location? Dwayne may know because he's had a review of that. I don't have an idea of what they specifically did. That was part of the overall discussion about what they did.
So I'm going to push this over to either Don or Dwayne, whichever would like to lead off. Dwayne, I'm going to let Dwayne finish that off.
Sure. So essentially, the OPP are currently reviewing the Bristol Terrace facility, and we did a walkthrough of the building, and they've explained in terms of what they're envisioning in terms of what renovations need to be made to the building. So they have to do, for example, there's some rearranging. They're looking at security. They have to up the security level system in there. They're to be preparing a price quote outlining all the details and then sending it to me or to us to have a look at, so we know what it is that they're proposing to do to it. They did walk me through, they did explain kind of their thoughts in terms of what they feel needs to be done. They've taken that, gone back having discussions among themselves, getting price quotes, and then I'm supposed to be getting something in the near future in terms of the actual physical changes that they need to make to the building.
Fair enough.
So do we know how long they plan on keeping that open? 3 years till transition, or we don't know? We just simply don't know.
So, no, the discussion of the Bristol Terrace location was that it will be open until the new administration building is done. So when the new OPP building is done, they have to decide what they're doing with all the satellite offices in here in Canada, not just Wingham's. There's one in South Huron, there's other ones. So they're making decisions that aren't necessarily ours to have, because we don't own that building to begin with. They do. So they can make that decision. We as council and we as Public Services Board have an obligation, I think, to the ratepayers that if we think it's important to have that building here, we need to voice our concern about that building being moved. South Huron, you've seen it in the package tonight. South Huron's had that concern. You know, I think if there's a place to have, that's a conversation that both the North Huron Police Services Board, this council need to go back and look at it together and say, does it make sense from a taxpayer perspective that we have that building here for whatever reason? And if we think it's important, then we need to voice that concern to the OPP and do it in such a way that we make it well known and vocally. And I'm sure other Huron County councils and boards are going to be having the same conversation. So if we agree with their conversation, I think more messages that the OPP get about this satellite office discussion, the better we have.
So I'm going to follow up with that. I have been having discussions with other mayors in the region, and we will be having a presentation before our council, maybe at the next council meeting, on concerns that other locations are having. We're going to have a discussion about that as council based on the contract that we signed, the closure of that building, where that leaves the safety net for our society during a storm or whatever, and where the police would be if there was a storm and these kind of things. So that will be coming. We can leave that for tonight because that will be coming forward to our council.
Yeah, and the one thing I did want to say with the capital costs, that was a number that they had to put in because they didn't know what they wanted to do at the time of the discussion about getting it in to council for the package for the agreement. So that's the number. If it's less, they're not, that's where this whole quote discussion and budget stuff comes here. If we can somehow manipulate or make it well known that we don't want them to spend $244,000 and we can somehow gauge that, then maybe that's the conversation we have. It is our money. It is in the agreement. So, in essence, the money is being allocated to them. But, we have that option, as Dwayne is saying, they're sending us stuff. So, we as council need to be informed about those and voice what their directions are. What are you doing? Is it really necessary based on what you believe? If we think that satellite office is very, very important, I think we want them to do what they need to do, because we don't want them to have to come back to us in 3 years or 3.5 years for more money to do what they need to do when they could have did it now.
Yeah, that's the thing. If they're guaranteed to be there, then you don't mind spending the money. But then the exit costs.
So
Deputy Reeve, explain it.
So the exit cost is the termination cost. So under their agreement, every officer, what is required, their termination clause in the agreement was
Severance.
2 years.
Severances.
Yes, 2 weeks for every year of service, to a maximum of 35 weeks. So that's the calculation that's been determined in there.
Okay. I'm going to read the motion that the Council Township of North Huron hereby receive the 2019 North Huron Police Services budget as presented by the Chair of the Police Services Board, and further that the Council Township of North Huron direct the police budget to be included in the final draft of the budget. Do I have a mover? Paul? and seconded by Trevor. Any other comments, questions?
I just want to say, if there is any questions between now and March the 18th, feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll be more than happy to respond to your questions independently, just so that we can make sure that you're well informed up on till March the 18th, okay?
All in favor? Passes. Okay. Next is Recreation Community Services. And we have a Recreation Community Services. We have that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby approve the proposed 2019 Recreation Community Services fees and charges as presented. And further, the council directs the staff to include the approved fees, the future update of the fees and charges bylaw. Yeah, yes, call. I think I'll call for a mover first, Vicky, since I got that far. Do I have a mover? Anita? Seconder? Paul? Oh, yeah, kiddo, it's your turn.
All right, thank you, Your Worship. Staff have put together a report, basically outlining, providing a basic summary of the process for fees and charges, and basically on an annual basis, our staff put forward a recommendation to increase the fees by COLA, or cost of living. Council had, through the budget process, had determined that that would be around 2% or 2.2%. We used 2% in our fee increases instead of the 2.2%, and applied it across the board of the fees. Now, the fees that we presented the fees that were attached to the report also include the airport fees. And I did circulate this evening a revised schedule for the airport fees due to a revision that needed to be made. But as you know, the fees and charges that are put forth are used to offset the cost to the taxpayers. We use the revenue that's generated from the usage of facilities, as well as program registration and fees for services to offset any costs for operating programs and services and things. So there are some specialty classes that we do offer that is on a break or cost recovery or break-even basis and things. So those increase a little bit higher. We propose an increase a little bit more than 2% for those. Other than that, if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Questions or comments, Mr. Syke?
Yeah, Vicky, I just wondering, I apologize, this is not a question you're going to be able to answer, but you could definitely be able to investigate what the answer was. When was the last time we compared our fees in that to market? Not necessarily just increasing to COLA, but what was the last time that you can recall, or would you in your dealings with this when they were dealt with market?
Through you, Your Worship.
Yep.
My memory is fairly short as my career is here, so I cannot answer that question as of yet. But one of the things I was considering was over the next year or two in doing like a market assessment.
Good.
And things. So based on just having a short time frame here, I haven't been able to really do a market survey and things, but if it is council's wish, we could do one in 2019, or we can do it in 2020, whatever the direction may be.
Just to follow up, Mr. Sykes, I believe we did it in 2015 when I was on council.
Right.
So it's a long time.
So my argument, if it was at least 5 years ago, the conversation is with the next budget cycle, my idea would be to have that as a part of the market, as part of the budget discussion, to have the market test done at that point. At least then we know as it relates to that now.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Passes. Request from the Town Hall Theater that the Council Township of North Huron approve the request of the Wingham Town Hall Theater Committee to hold a licensed event at the Council Chambers / Green Room on Sunday, March 24th, 2019 from 2 to 3 o'clock. I'm going to ask for a mover before we talk about it.
I'll move for discussion.
Okay, Trevor Sipes and Paul, you're seconding. Okay, so questions and comments from the councilors. But Trevor,
I did want to make a comment, this has been a request, I don't foresee this to be a huge, volume event. I think ultimately, when I talked to the BIA and the chair, Doug Kivanovan, had mentioned this at the BIA meeting last week, that there's going to be a VIP part of it before, and then there's a public. We're not considering this to be heavy usage. It's just the opportunity for them to be celebrated in the fact that they have provided some service and funds and volunteers in a way to express their gratitude to them. And I don't have any concern from that perspective. They have to follow the same municipal alcohol policy stuff that we have on target. So if they accept that, staff are required to follow that under our liability insurance. So if staff have no concerns when the process is being through, I have no concerns from a process wise either.
any other questions or concerns? Before I call the vote, I want to say if you haven't been upstairs, you got to take a tour upstairs. It is amazing what they've done, and they have worked so hard. It is unbelievable what they've done up there. With that, I will call the vote. Passes. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Public Works. And we have the OPS 2019-3 Council Chamber proposed upgrades. So I'm just going to read the motion again first, get a mover and seconder, and then we'll talk about it. That the Council Township of North Huron hereby receive the report from the Director of Public Works dated March 4th, 2019 regarding proposed council chamber upgrades for information. And further, that the project be approved to proceed to an upset limit of $10,000 to be drawn from Town Hall facility reserves. Do I have a mover? Anina, and seconded again by Paul. Did you want to talk to this, Sean?
Yes, if I could, please.
Thank you.
Basically, the timing is very strange on this report, but it's almost in a sense born out of necessity. It's a couple of things that came up after we had gotten to the point where we had put our capital request for 2019 forward. This has to do with two issues surrounding the council chambers. The first issue being one of confidentiality. What we found is that this room does not have the ability to appropriately cloak closed session conversation. So we looked at some of the options surrounding how we would manage that, and it looks like most of the problems surrounding that main council chambers entranceway. We've talked to a contractor who is looking at some sort of a sound attenuating door structure. It'd be a solid panel door. We would look at sound attenuating seals, which are on the market and available, as well as possibly some sound deadening and dampening material around the door as our first or our 2019 initiative. If for some reason we found that wasn't adequate, there are next level options that we can look at, and those would be things brought forward in 2020. But basically where it stands right now, that door, that whole area there does not have any ability to deaden, dampen, or otherwise mask sound. As we got into conversation around the council chambers, the other concern was one of, I got to be careful using the term accessibility, but viewability of information that we show in council chambers. Specifically, we're seeing a lot more use of multimedia, and as everybody can attest to, we have one screen in the room, and that does create, on more than a regular occasion, it creates problems for some people, particularly the chair who's unable to see. So the proposal here would be that we would go to, and we did look at other options, really the configuration of the room kept knocking things off of the list. So what we're proposing would be a 75-inch flat screen at the front, and then 65s on each of these walls, which would give basically viewing for presentations and that from any vantage point within the room. The other thing that we're suggesting or recommending in this report would be that there'd be an upgrade to the interface. Right now, basically you have an interface from a laptop and that's it, which does to a certain extent limit the media that you can stream. So it would be a simple upgrade to change the interface cord. So then we're thinking it would be available for use, for DVD training programs and that sort of thing. So we're looking at this as stage one of perhaps an ongoing upgrade or update of the room over the years. Basically, where that brings us though is, and again, it's difficult in that this kind of came on after the budget cycle had already almost come to a conclusion. So the total estimate for this work would be, as mentioned in the resolution, of $10,000 for both projects. $4,000 for sound attenuation, approximately $6,000 for the audio and visual upgrades. We're proposing, now there's a couple options council does have at this point. We could actually add it to the budget. But the resolution here indicates that we would draw it from reserve. And although I mentioned 24,000, there's various different kind of residual reserve funds that we could draw it from to make it come to fruition. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention is this is by no means the beginning and end of upgrades to town hall. For this year, should the budget pass, we're looking at fairly significant insulation upgrades to the attic. And it's definitely in need. There's less than 8 inches of insulation up there. And also in the budget is upgrades to the elevator, which is lacking in terms of accessibility, as well as some accessibility enhancements to the front reception area. So when you look at the whole project for this year, it would be a fairly significant upgrade. And then as we move into the future, one of the things that we'll perhaps discuss at the next budget cycle would be consideration for a BCA, a building condition assessment for all North Huron assets. That's something we can work towards.
Questions or comments? Yes, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, through you, Reeve. Sean, I was 65 and I know I'd probably look this way, but from here, it's still not big enough. It sounds big, but it's not. It's not. Even for Reeve to look that way, I sit about that far from ours, and reading some of the type is difficult. Pictures are great, but reading is difficult. So you might even consider a 75s all around. Just a thought.
Through your, that is one thing we mentioned that we had originally looked at, and 75 would fit on the walls. It just becomes, there's no question that there's a lot of monitor on the wall at that point. That's the only thing. If we were to go to 75s, it would probably increase the upset limit to approximately 12,000 to do the job. They would fit, but it just becomes a lot of.
Well, 2,000, you're allowing 2,000. That should cut one, but you know better than I do. I know what a 65's worth, but all right.
Anita?
I find that a lot of money for what we're going to do for the little bit of time we are using the TVs. And what is wrong with that screen in the monitor? There's nothing.
You
I
can't see
agree.
it.
No, but most of it is on our iPad. And there are some things like the presentation from Laura this night was just, let's say, 10 or 15 minutes. Is that I find it a lot of taxpayers' money what we'll use for a little bit of time and a little bit of convenience for a few people.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Okay, 7.5, there's nothing for the fire department, building department, child department, CAO. Do you have anything good? Nothing for the CAO? Sorry. Sorry. It's been a long day, as you know. So we're now going to go to correspondence, and we're going to start with 8.1 South Huron Resolution, Huron County Council Administration Building. I'd kind of like to talk to this one. Can I do it from the chair, or do you want to switch with me, Trevor?
It's really up to decide if council. It's not my choice, it's council's choice whether they're okay with.
You're okay with me up here? Okay. So there is a discussion, and it's going on for a while, about relocating the county council and leaving it in Goderich, but it's been brought up a few times about, I'm on the right one, right? Yeah, the administration building. And through the course of time, the little bit of time I've been there, it's gone from replacing a lot of buildings to maybe just some of the buildings, and I don't know the location they have. There's some situations with it. But it was brought up, I believe, by Mr. Finch from South Huron that this could be a time to move the county building to a central location in Huron County, which would be Clinton or Blythe in my estimates. So we put this on the agenda for our council to talk about and discuss. This move will be made every 150 years or something like that. The buildings do last a long time the way they build them. So I'd just like to, I personally think it should be moved to the central location here in county. When you're in Goderich, you can only go one way. We all know the lake is the other way, so you're drawing everything from one side, or three sides instead of four. Where if you're centrally located for all employees, for all anybody that wants to come to the municipality, it would be the center. So just want to run that around the tables here and see if the council would like to support the idea of moving it to a central location. And again, this is just a recommendation that we'd send to the county on behalf of North Huron. So do I have anybody that would like? Yes, go ahead.
That's what the OPP did.
Yep.
Everyone was in Goderich.
Yep. Anyone else?
Support it.
You would support it? Thank you.
Do you really feel that they need a new building? Is it not sufficient where they on the square? I don't know. I'm just always in save money mode if need be, like if necessary.
Yeah.
You know, spend it if you need to. But that's a lot of money. What does that do to our taxes?
So when they originally planned this, or when I first became on council, it was a matter of they have, I think, 5 or 6 different buildings they work out of for different parts of the county, whether it's the works, the hospital or the library or the old age. Everybody was in a different location, and they have some. So the whole idea originally was to sell some of that off. And the maintenance on those buildings and the very old building on the center of the square, if they were to build a new one down on, can't think of the name, Victoria Street, I believe it is, they would, it really wouldn't be that costly to them because it's the same amount as repairing the old ones. But and I wasn't at the last county meeting because I was ill that day, but the previous one they talked about, they may not be able to do that. So I personally think they need to consolidate them all into one place, or as much as they can into one place. And I personally think they should locate it centrally, because if they do it that way, then they're going to sell off the other buildings and make money. If they're going to go ahead anyway and build a new one, whether that be the case or not, whether they keep the old buildings, again, I'm thinking that it would be a better location central to Huron County. And I'll give you an example, and I may have mentioned this before. If you try to find the South Bruce municipal, I think it's on the 5th on the other side of King Carden in the middle of a cornfield. Like it's 7-8 miles outside of town. So that's for South Bruce, I believe. So it's not something that hasn't been seen. They did not keep their town hall in King Carden. It actually moved outside. So it's not new or unique. It's just an opportunity that's going to come along once in a lifetime. And do we want to reestablish the county and draw the center of the county closer to the northern side?
Do they have reserves?
I believe so. Don't hold me to that again. I'd have to get numbers out. They have it as far as the money. Why? Yeah, they're working on the money idea and all that. It's not, this just didn't come out of the blue. This is long before we were around council. This idea came around. They've got to the point where they have conceptual drawings of a building. on Victoria Street, which we've all seen. So this is not an overnight thing. So that's why it's before council. Yes, Kevin?
Jerry, I agree with your assessment. I think it would be wonderful to get some of that economic spin off of that building, and I wouldn't think that Blythe being bordering right on Central Huron would be any less of a place than being right in Central Huron. So I would say I give my support to a letter going through to ask them to consider a different location.
Appreciate that. Go ahead, Paul.
I take it there's quite a few upgrades to be done to these buildings down in Goderich.
Yeah, the budget shows millions of dollars of repairs. It's an aging, no different than us.
I guess we have to look forward, and by rights it should be in the center, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I think a letter would be indicating that we're for it.
Anyone else? Trevor?
In my mind, the consolidation of the buildings is more important than the location. But if you're going to do it, you do it all at the same time, and that's, I think, what we're talking about here. And I think at the end of the day, it's county council's decision on where that building is, and staff's recommendation on where it is will come from staff on where they think it should go. I think our support is going to be where it goes is going to be part of that, but I wouldn't hold my breath that if all the councils in Huron County decided to say it should go to Clinton, and I wouldn't hold my breath that it would go to Clinton. I would just say it would just that's the belief I've got in the past. So I think if they're looking at consolidation, I am not a big proponent of consolidation and, oh no, let's keep this building here, and then let's keep this building here, and then let's keep this building here. If you're going to consolidate, you consolidate and be done with it, and have a building that you can have for the next 50 or 75 years, not 10 years and then have to build an expansion outside of it or whatever. So I'm in support of sending anything what council believes is the important part. Any economic spinoff, from centralizing that, I'm not sure it would be limited, only because I would suggest the majority of the people working or live in Goderich that work at the county, so they're going to still live in Goderich. They're not going to move, so maybe, but I would be in support of anything that council chooses.
Go ahead, Chris.
Just a note, they plan to build a new hospital in Goderich to the east, and it didn't go because the people didn't want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. So yeah, what happens, I guess, but staff would figure it out.
So could we put a motion on the floor that the North Huron Council agrees to support the concept of relocating the county administration building to a more central location for Huron County? Paul puts a motion forward. Do I have a seconder? Kevin seconds. All in favor?
Sure, why not?
Passes. Okay, and we have 8.2 was the add-on to your agenda. This was a request that was made, and again, this is to help school children and that out. I hope you've had a chance to read it. I know it was just shown. So we're just looking for a motion to support the letter. It's correspondence from the Sacred Heart. I think that should be parent council. Yeah, okay. Parent council, do I have a mover? Anina, and a seconder? Mr. Sipe? Questions or comments? Does anybody want time to read that?
I'll make a comment, just that I'm quite impressed. Just the social inclusion through this parent-teacher, or parent-student collaboration is the betterment of the community, and I applaud them.
Absolutely. Trevor?
Yeah, just a comment. This is similar to what Maitland River did in the Building Bridges community that's similar to what they're trying to do. They're trying to make more out of space to learn outside and stuff. And anything that they can do to make a change to, child education, I'm in full support of.
Any other comments, questions? Then I call the vote. Unanimous. And council report, starting with the REAV activity. As I said, I was sick for a few days last week, so I got a bit of a bit here. So the county still, of course, is working through the budget. As Donna knows, we may be held up to the end of March before we can pass ours because we're waiting on what they're going to do on their end of it, I believe. But they're at, it's looking really good from the county point of view. Yeah. We were over at the firefighters for the awards the other night. It was a really good time, good bunch of folks over there. Quite enjoyable to see the firefighters out. I don't know if a lot of people realize the firefighters do more than just firefight. And I'll give you an example. As you know, my wife is the principal at the public school, but the firefighters, without recognition every year, come and ask her for a list of names of needy children. And out of their own dollars, they go buy them presents, they wrap them, and they deliver them to the school. And they will even deliver them to their home if needed. Those are the things above and beyond that people around us do that we're just not aware of. So I just want to commend them for everything they do, from their actual volunteer job right on through to helping our society out in any way, shape, or form they can. The one we were at, Anina and Chris were with us at the last Friday. We went and we represented you folks at the, just give me a second here, the HCFA, which is the farmers organization. I'm sure one of you folks will want to talk to it, so I'll let you have that opportunity. And this coming Wednesday night, of course, is Win This Space, so it'd be nice if some of us show up. I'll be there to see that go through. Again, that's just fantastic, the way our community pulls together to help each other. And with that, I'm going to run it on over to council members. Updates from any members that would like to talk. Anina?
Sure, yeah. As you mentioned, we went to the Union Confederation of Agricultural Local Politicians Forum with Ben Bob and Lisa Thompson. I found that all the representatives were clear of the significance of agriculture for the direct and indirect to the local economy. They were certain that we all have to work together for a profitable, sustainable, and vibrant future for rural Ontario, our local communities, and our local farmers. Labor shortages and affordable housing were mentioned over and over again. We need to expand our towns and make sure we have housing so we attract people, and that's what what we're doing right now. And yeah, the overall tendency was to grow and improve our local economy so people will prosper and go from there.
Yep.
Yeah. I found it a really, really good.
It was
a good meeting.
Did you want to speak to it, Chris?
Just a little bit. It's an annual event, and it's a tremendous way of our local agricultural committees getting the ear of our politicians, and they're listening, they're writing down, taking notes and stuff, so it's good.
Any other councillors have anything they would like to, any activities? Go ahead, Trevor.
I did want to mention that the BIA had their annual meeting last Thursday, and between that and the final day of the Wingham Police Service, I was able to go back and forth between the two events. So the one thing I did want to mention is that there was a number of awards that were presented. The new businesses were acknowledged to Annette's Treasures Galore, the Pioneer Gas Bar, Buck and Joe's, Ship to Shore, and the Royal Oaks Pharmacy. And then the Civic Improvement Award went to the Pioneer Gas Building, obviously, for the significant improvement for that location in that area. Volunteers of the Year went to Gary and Maureen Lyle, obviously, for what they have contributed over the past number of years, not only in this year, but that with regards to their service to the community. Business of the Year went to Gemstones, Essence, and the Artesian Market, and the Sherry's Barbershop. So, and then the Lifetime Achievement Award went to Dave and Marie Wallace for their years of operating Ernie King's Music. So that business has ran for more than 25 years in its current location. So Dave was as a past BIA board member and a tremendous asset to the Wingham BIA. So there is going to be a retirement celebration for both Dave and Marie. I believe it's at the Legion. I will have to confirm the date. I think it's March. It's a Sunday, March the 24th or 7th. I will send it to council when I get that to. It's going to be kind of a meet and greet, in and out, and a celebration. There's going to be music and stuff, obviously, the way Dave and Marie would liked it. The actual Ernie's King's Music store is actually closing in the town of Wingham. Their son is operating one in Goderich, so the business is still around. It's just not in North Huron. So, the BIA congratulated them for their years of service, and it was very nice evening to present to them that. The other thing I did want to mention, and I did send to Marty and both the deputy chiefs, is I was very upset the fact that I was unable to attend. I double booked myself and was unable to attend the swearing in of the Blythe fire members. I did send my messages after the fact to both Marty and the deputy chiefs to convey my apologies on behalf of myself. Not necessarily. I'm hoping that we had some council representative. I'm sure Kevin was Kevin didn't go. So I'm not sure. So we did have council representation. So I am glad, because I did mention that I was going to go, and then I found out that after the next day that I had missed it. So I was very upset at myself, and I did want to apologize to them. So I did get that to convey them that I did apologize on that. But I did want to mention that. Other than that, it's been a busy time with regards to the budget time, and I'm hoping that at some point that we can start to level out the involvement. Because I think we've definitely had a significant learning curve over the past 3 months, and we're all learning, and I do appreciate council's support and the Reeves support too, as we transition from the Wingham Police Service to the OPP. So I do appreciate that. But that's all I had.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Kevin.
I'd just also like to give my congratulations to these service. Years of service members that were getting their long service awards at the fire department. Excuse myself for not being there. I can't say I double booked. I think I just had my brain in park and forgot that was the day it was on. But I just wanted to bring up to how the lineage of the fire department is changing, and then how effective they are in the community. I want to tell just a short little story about there was a young boy that lived down from the fire hall when we were down more in the central part of town, and every time the fire trucks went up past his place, no matter what time of day it was, the light would come on in his bedroom, and he'd be out waving at 3 o'clock in the morning. Whenever he heard the siren, he'd be waving away. He just got sworn in as a firefighter. He's not that little boy anymore. He's a 6'3", 250-pound strapping man now. But it makes a difference in the community where with their emergency services. They do an impressive job, and they do impress little children to become something in their dreams. So I want to congratulate him on getting sworn in, and again on the others getting their lifetime achievement awards. I think it's been mentioned before. The average lifespan of a firefighter, a volunteer firefighter, is around 5 to 7 years. We've got people getting, just with turnover, with people moving on their jobs, and with the training that's involved into it. The North Huron Fire Services has a great knowledge base with people with 30, 35 years, 25 years, 20. It's just, they're long past their freshness date, but they do a great job of passing on the information and the knowledge base. Just want to say congratulations to them.
Sweet.
Sorry, Reeve, I did want to mention, I think it would be important that there is one individual in Blythe that got a pretty prestigious award that I think this council should, and I'm apologetic if I don't get the name. I think it's Michaela Ansley. Sorry, Ainsley. So she won an essay, the best essay in the world, and that's a pretty significant honor. I would propose that the municipality provide a letter of congratulations on behalf of council and the ratepayers of North Huron to properly exercise her right that she is the champion, and congratulate her on her award. So I will make that motion if that is okay.
Yes. Second, Nina, seconds. I know there's no conversation. All in favor? Yes, way to go. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on to comments by members. I think we just did that. And next is notice of a motion. Does anybody have notice of upcoming motion? Not seeing any. Let's go to the bylaws. So, bylaw number 23, 2019, being a bylaw to adopt a code of conduct policy for members of council and local boards, be introduced, read a first, second, and third and final time, signed by the Reeve and clerk, and engrossed in the bylaw books. Do I have a mover? Mr. Sipe. Anina? All in favor? Carries. I think it dropped down to the next one, guys. Being a bylaw 2019, being a bylaw to adopt the code of conduct policy for members. No, I didn't drop down. Sorry. This one here. Being bylaw number 24-2019, being a bylaw to adopt the council members and parental leave policy, be introduced and read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve and clerk and engrossed in the bylaw books. Do I have a mover? Anita and Kevin. All in favor? Carries. Number 11.3. Bylaw number 25, 2019, being a bylaw to amend and appoint persons, including council members, to various boards and committees and associations for the term of 2018 to 2022. Be introduced and read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve and clerk and engrossed in the bylaw books. Do I have a mover? Mr. McBurney, Chris Palmer, all in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 11.4, being a bylaw number 26, 2019, being a bylaw to appoint a CEO, deputy clerk for the township of North Huron, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve and clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw books. Do I have a mover? Mr. Sipes, Mr. Heffer, all in favor? Carried. Number 11.5, being a bylaw number 27, 2019, being a bylaw to appoint the clerk, a clerk, health, and safety coordinator for the township of North Huron, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve and clerk and engrossed in the bylaw books. Do I have a mover? Rick? Chris? All in favor? Carried. Did you want to speak? Yeah.
So just, the Reeve has just asked me to speak to bylaw 27 2019. And for the general public's information, council has appointed Carson Lamb as our new clerk, health and safety coordinator, effective April 1st of 2019. Carson is currently employed at the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. He is from Huron County. And he has a good understanding of rural communities. So We're looking forward to working with him. I think he'll be a great asset to our team.
Thank you very much. So next are the announcements. The next economic development meeting will be held on Thursday, March 14th, 2019 at 8 a.m. At 221 Josephine Street, Wingham. And that's tentative. We also have the next regular council meeting be held Monday, March 18th, 2019, 6 p.m. right here in the chambers. The next Police Services Board meeting will be held Tuesday, March 19th, 2019, 7 p.m. Again here in the chambers. Number 13, is there any other business from anyone? Not seeing any. There's no closed session tonight. So could we have the confirmatory bylaw? And yes, it kicked in for me. That the bylaw 28, 2019 being a bylaw to confirm March 4th, 2019 actions of the Council of the Township of North Huron be introduced, read a first, second, and third and final time, signed by the lead and clerk, can be engrossed in the bylaw books. Do I have a mover? Mr. Sipes and Mr. Palmer. All in favor? Do I have a mover for adjournment? Mr. Sipes, Mr. Heffer, all in favor? Passed. Thank you.